If you're the man of the house, this one's for you. If your irrigation system ever gets stuck on and it's not shutting off, it just keeps running and running and running, here's what you do. Look through your yard until you find a metal circular lid in your yard. It could be in your lawn, it could be in your garden. And this is going to be your water meter where you can shut off the main to cut it off at the source. Some properties have 2 of these water meters, one for the irrigation and one for the home. Other properties, the irrigation is tied into your home's system. Neither one's wrong. Typically they'll have 2 so that you can save money on your water bill and not have to pay a sewer fee for every gallon that you use. So just, whether you have 1 or 2, just open them up and then you can see which one's running. This is your water meter, and you'll know it's running because water meters have what's called a leak indicator here. This will be spinning, and you'll also see the big dial spinning typically as well, and that'll tell you that there's water running through it. Most systems will also have a separate valve that comes off of the water meter that is just for the irrigation. This is the backflow preventer, and typically will have valves on it. You just shut off these valves, and that'll shut off the system just for the irrigation. If you can't find that, then you just have to use a wrench or one of these handy dandy meter key tools to turn the knob on your water meter, and that's going to shut it off. Do this with one hand here. Turn it to the right. This one's kind of hard to turn, and since we found this valve, it's pointless for me to shut it off anyway. But I just wanted to make the point, like, this is how you turn it off at the meter itself. And now, as you can see, the water is shut off. Now it's time to call the irrigation guy to come out and fix that leaking valve, or you can keep watching this video and I'll teach you how to do it yourself. Often the hardest first step is finding out where the valve is that's stuck open, and it can be anywhere in the yard. Typically you'll find a valve box in the ground, or you'll have a situation like this one where there's not even a valve box, it's just a hole in the ground. The valves can be buried under mulch and garden beds, they can be hidden in the lawn somewhere, and I've seen it before where they get buried with no valve box and you have no way of finding them at all. So in situations like that, that's where you need to have someone come in and do a utility locate, a cable locate, to find out where those valves are at, and then they can be repaired from there. But if you know where your valve is, you're in luck, and we can keep going with the repair. Each brand of valve will look a little bit different, but they all accomplish the same end goal, and that is to turn off and on the water to the specific zone of your lawn that was stuck open. The reason why these get stuck open, I can explain by showing you the insides of these valves and how they work. So here's a valve in the ground, it's installed on the piping. Water comes in one side. I'm going to put this valve next to it so you can kind of see. Water comes in, and it comes into this cavity here, and then there's this diaphragm that sits right here on top of that opening. I'll put it on the right way. There we go, like this. Okay. So water pressure builds up behind this and lifts this up. That allows water to pass and go through and continue on. Well, there's a spring on here, and this spring provides downward pressure to push against that water, but the spring is actually not powerful enough to overcome the force of that water. What actually overcomes it is there is a hole right here that allows water to come up into the top of this seal and fill up this cavity, and it equalizes that pressure to where now that spring is able to overcome it because it's equal pressure, and now it has a spring on the top that keeps it closed, right? Well, the way it works is there's an electrical solenoid in here that when your irrigation controller turns on this zone, it activates the magnet inside of there, and there's like a plunger, and it will stop, and it will allow and disallow water to come into that top cavity based on whether it's allowing this tiny little hole to open. So if there's no water in the top, the water will prevail at the bottom and allow water, it'll push it up and allow water to go through. If the solenoid is active, then it will it'll be the opposite, right? And then you won't be able to get the water to go through. So what happens is this little hole right here, it can happen in a couple of different ways, but often this little weep hole can get debris in it, and that will cause it to not be able to allow water to flow through that hole. It can get trapped, right? Or not go through. And then you can also get debris down in here that can cause issues as well. So it's typically a problem where someone has made a repair to your pipe and they got dirt in a line, and now the dirt has made its way all the way into that valve, and now it's stuck in that valve. Now that valve is not able to close like it's designed to. So in cases like that, oftentimes you can just dismember the valve like I have here. You can leave this bottom part in the ground rather than digging up the entire valve box and having to cut all this PVC pipe and reglue it and all this mess. You can typically rebuild the valve with new components, you know, as long as you have a matching valve as the one that you have in the ground. So you simply just take the top off. There's screws. Take the top off, and then you can take out that diaphragm and swap it for a new diaphragm, new spring, put the top back on, make sure it's clear of debris, and then you're good to go. Test out and make sure that it is properly holding against that water pressure. Rebuilding valves is so much easier than cutting it out, especially if you've got a situation where you have a larger valve box and you have multiple valves in there, because if you have to cut a valve out of a manifold, and a manifold is basically a series of different valves connected in one valve box, depending on how it's piped, you may have to completely rebuild that entire manifold and reinstall all of those valves if there's not enough extra pipe to grab onto to put your stuff back together again after you cut one of them out. So it's always preferred to rebuild a valve if you can. A lot of times I'll get in here and I'll find a valve that is just buried in dirt, and then you got to clear away all the dirt to even see it. So sometimes that situation happens too. A telltale sign is if you see wires sticking out. Typically those wires are what's going to that solenoid leading to that valve. All right, so I got the top off, and if we look in here, I can see there is some debris in there. Let's pop off this diaphragm. There it is. See, look, we got rocks right there inside that valve. That's what's causing the problem. Look at that, right inside that valve. This one was caused because the internet service provider had ran a trench for they trenched in a new line on the property, and in the process of that, they hit the main line. And then when they made the repair, they didn't flush out the dirt before they repaired it. And so all that rock and debris and dirt just went downstream straight into the valves. When I was getting those rocks out of there, one of the rocks flicked its way back up into the pipe. So I'm actually gonna have to run a little water through this pipe to get that to come back out again, hopefully get that out. All right, just a short little spurt of water here. And shut it off. I don't wanna run it for very long because that valve box is quickly gonna get flooded out. That wasn't long enough to get the water to flush out. So customer's actually gonna go turn it on, and then you get to see right here as the water comes out. There we go. There we go. I'm gonna get some of this debris out of the water. I don't want a bunch of grass and leaves going down back into that valve again. Got it. After flushing it a couple times, there's still just a little bit of debris on that spot where it seals. So I'm just gonna take a garden hose and just carefully rinse it off, get it clean. Okay, all set. So when you put the diaphragm back on, make sure it goes on the right way. There's typically just only one way it goes on, and you'll typically see the little hole where it's supposed to allow that water to get into the upper chamber. Make sure that's on the right side. Get that on there. Okay, now we're gonna take the new upper part of the valve body and stick that on. The side with the solenoid lines up with that little weep hole. Line it up. And you should feel the back pressure of that spring pushing up against you. All right, I got all those screws back on. So now the last step is you have to rewire that solenoid. So we still have the old solenoid attached to the old wiring. So what we're gonna do is take some wire cutters and cut this wire off. And then you're gonna strip off the rubber sheathing on that wire using the correct gauge setting based on the size of the wire that you got. Most of the time it's gonna be like an 18 gauge. So technically I'm reusing part of the wire from the old solenoid. This is okay because this wire is not corroded, it's in good shape. But if you look at that wire and it's like greenish or bluish color, or it looks just really dirty, then you're gonna have to go down into the dirt and try to find the wire nuts where that original solenoid wire was connected and make a connection there. If you can just redo that connection, I mean, that's probably the best way to do it. But if your wire is in good shape, there is no reason you cannot just reuse what you have and just simplify the project for you. When you reconnect those wires, it's very important that you use silicone wire nuts. Don't just use regular ones, because then water will get into the connection and it'll short it out and it won't work. So you have to use these ones that are full of silicone, because it protects the wiring so that your wire can be underneath the water, submerged when it rains, valve box gets full of water, and the electrical connection will stay intact. So connect the wires, you just twist them together initially, and then the exposed metal ends you twist together as well. You want to twist them to the right, righty-tighty, because you're going to be putting your wire nut on, screwed on right as well. Once you finish reconnecting those wires, you've got the valve all back together again. Now you're just going to turn the main on for your water, and make sure there's not any like water leaking out the bottom of the valve or anything like that. Make sure it's all watertight. It is staying off still. And then you go to your clock, do a manual run at your clock, and just verify that it does in fact turn itself back on and then turn itself back off again by itself. And that's how you know your repair has been completed successfully. Hope this video has been helpful. If you have any questions, drop a comment below. See ya.